Canada's industrial and oil and gas and resource sector is in a fairly profound state of transition at this time. And even though I don't subscribe at this time that we're all past the rough patches, I think we're still in for quite a few dips. Mid 2018, there's going to be more people entering the unemployed market, and also a lot of the folks that have been off work for quite some time are going to really give up and just find work in another industry and adjust their lifestyle. Now, contrary to that, if some projects go ahead, and I'm thinking predominantly in BC, we could be in a situation where there's fairly focused and acute requirements for domestic supply to be supported, potentially with temporary foreign workers again. Not on a mass scale that we saw before, but just really, I think, focused and particularized skill sets would be possibly required to serve the projects that are coming down the pipe, mostly driven by BC at this time. So with that being said, I wanted to raise this nuance that I noticed last year. It was, with all the layoffs and everything, it was absolutely not timely whatsoever. And but as people are setting up for projects or planning for projects, it's one of those things that you have to get it right at the beginning, because it's tough to, or it can be tough to correct it after the fact. So what this pertains to is certain changes in requirements for job advertising and administration of job applications with respect to the Canada Job Bank, particularly when it is in respect to supporting a labor market impact assessment supported work permit, which would be an avenue to bring in temporary workforce from outside of Canada. So just quickly on the job bank, recruiters will agree that for filling positions with qualified candidates, the job bank is not exactly in the top 10 of mediums available in the market that they would choose to meet that end. For position sourcing that may require non-domestic sourcing tactics, there is a requirement, however, to advertise on the Canada Job Bank, regardless of where the opportunity resides. And this is a slight change because it's not exactly a current change, but it is a change, just to put it out there, that it's no longer sufficient to use the more focused provincial job boards, which previously linked to the Canada Job Bank, like BC's Work BC board at workbc.ca. In that situation, you would post the job to Work BC, and essentially the Canada Job Bank was essentially a syndicated job advertisement that the Canada Job Bank just picked up the Work BC board. But that's no longer in the case, and it's now the responsibility of employers, regardless of what provincial mediums were available before, to manage the Canada Job Bank advertising directly. However, in order to satisfy the actual recruitment of the project, domestic recruitment, there's an absolute need to remain on regional job boards. The use of boards like Work BC are essential for satisfying regional socioeconomic commitments necessary to support local community and local Indigenous participation on the project. And again, as a domestic recruitment penetration tool, the Canada Job Board is actually one of the worst mediums for satisfying that objective. It's the worst medium for applicant relevance, penetration, engagement, effectiveness, applicant interface, recruiter interface, and integration with robust corporate recruitment software, which most boards actually just seamlessly integrate with these massive ATS, applicant tracking systems, that companies purchase and buy and use. So any significant reliance on the Canada Job Board will fail to result in achieving the regional priorities, the regional sourcing profile required of most projects. And the typical regional hiring priority in proximity to most projects would be hiring Indigenous and those qualified in the local community first, those qualified residing in the region next, those qualified whose residence is in the home province next, and then the rest of Canada. And then only after all of that, all of those pools of labor are tapped out, then is an employer potentially able to supplement domestic supply if there's still a gap by going outside of Canada. But the domestic regional priority is not just lip service. It's usually part of the project's regulatory approval. It's a requirement and I don't buy into the social license thing, but it's at least about the sustainable business development practice that's required to support the project. So what the requirement to focus on the Canada Job Bank, at the start, it creates a certain distraction from the domestic recruitment activities and resources that can become diluted by the requirements to run a parallel but ineffective recruitment effort through the rigid and cumbersome Canada Job Bank process. And my concern with this is actually what's going to happen is you're going to have one system where you're actually recruiting, and then the Canada Job Bank system is just possibly a tick box exercise, arbitrary tick box exercise to satisfy a labor market impact assessment requirement. And if there's an anticipated need for non-domestic supply to come and support the project, those that are responsible for managing both systems may drop their focus on the actual domestic penetration efforts and focus on satisfying the very rigorous reporting requirements out of the Canada Job Bank, which actually can just take away from the effort of actually achieving the domestic hires that the regulations are actually intending to maximize. So that's part of my concern. Whereas if the system was set up, and I'll just explain how that, what it looks like after, but if the system was set up to avoid and minimize administrative fatigue, the likelihood of administrative fatigue in the processing of these mass recruitment efforts, I'm not talking about one person, I'm talking about what my firm does is 200 or 300 positions in a particular category to support a 5,000 person project. There's administrative fatigue that I'm not sure that the policymakers really understand that arises from that kind of effort. But in any event, when a process avoids or minimizes that administrative fatigue, what results is a fierce and aggressive leveraging of every effective domestic recruitment tool available, which that is where the focus should be. And then accessing work permits through a labor market impact assessment only as a last-ditch effort. And that would be more consistent with the regulations and the spirit and intent of the regulations around labor market impact supported work permits. But regardless of the mismatch of the Canada Job Bank requirements, we cannot dilute our efforts to satisfy domestic and local socioeconomic commitments. We know that if local or regional talent wish to participate on a project, they are more likely to seek the opportunity on a project or company-specific job board. Word of mouth, employee referrals, job fairs, regional job boards like www.workbc.ca and other boards available in the market. A person living in Dawson Creek wishing to go to work on a gas plant 60 kilometers away does not seek the opportunity via the Canada Job Bank. To maintain maximum local and regional access and participation, it will be required to run now parallel systems. But there's also a need to standardize the reports so that the parallel efforts can be rolled up into one tracking sheet to support the labor market impact assessment application if that's required. This can be complex, especially as those organizations most effective in recruitment engage in a very decentralized approach to recruitment. Through persistent word-of-mouth recruitment, referrals, local project staff attending, community events, etc. It takes a life of its own. And rolling up the statistics, which is actually what's required for the labor market impact assessment. So rolling up the statistics of the foregoing into a centralized repository to eventually support the application, if that's required, is easier said than done. And curtailing or centralizing the activity of this fantastic domestic recruitment machine that's happening on the project is absolutely the wrong thing to do, because that would minimize the maximization of the domestic recruitment. And for those that are familiar with construction or industrial service organizations, industrial contractor organizations, you know that home office would never be able to keep up to the pace and dynamics of that decentralized effort that I've just described, which is usually driven by the project manager and the project team on the site and localized. The home office staff will never be able to keep up with how fast-paced and responsive that decentralized recruitment process is. Nevertheless, if coordinated reporting is not implemented, so you've got a decentralized setup, you've got a centralized setup, you've got one that's more focused on the Canada Job Bank and one that's actually focused on regional job boards and multiple sources. If there's not coordinated reporting implemented into the day-to-day recruiting process, then there will be a need to recreate the sourcing history after the fact. And sometimes this cannot be recreated after the fact, as the metrics required to support a labor market impact assessment application are distinct from those often tracked through strictly domestic recruiting efforts. The old adage, you can't make bad data good applies. So then what? If the sourcing experience cannot be regenerated from the two separate and independent sources, then the actual recruitment exercise must reoccur with the appropriate metrics tracked for the regulated period of time. So in this situation, employers caught flat-footed, if you will, could be forced to do the same thing and expect different results, usually under extreme pressure, as by the time the domestic recruitment efforts have failed, the recruitment deficit, even under the best situations, are usually affecting operations. So failing to integrate the domestic and labor market impact assessment required metrics capture into your regular recruitment processes creates delay, causes error, increases the potential to achieve an unfavorable response due to administrative and technical reasons, versus I can accept either achieving a labor market impact assessment work permit or having a labor market impact assessment work permit rejected because, lo and behold, we actually find available but unsourced domestic supply. But what is less, I guess, easy to swallow is to go through all this effort and then to have the labor market impact assessment application rejected based on a technicality, and which is not a measure at all in terms of the extreme and profound effort that is exercised to source and recruit and maximize domestic supply by most companies. Yeah, there's a few that take advantage of whatever, but I'm fortunate. I haven't worked with those guys. I've been working with companies that have been authentic in their domestic recruitment efforts. So, in addition, though, just moving down the list here, decentralizing the tracking and ranking that's kind of happens because of the requirement to run the job boards that are capable of being integrated with the corporate recruitment software and the Canada Job Bank. Runs contrary to the report consolidation that would have been otherwise offered through corporate and off-the-shelf recruitment software. So in addition to all of this, within the Canada Job Bank, and this is why that there's the additional requirement to advertise directly on the Canada Job Bank, is this new job match system, which is an automated application in which the software ranks passive Canadians, ones who have a profile on the Canada Job Bank but are not even applying for your positions. And these passive participants are ranked for a match of the position for which you're trying to fill. Employers must then positively seek out and invite all matched positive job seekers to apply for the position. So apparently no longer are candidates required to look for jobs in Canada and apply for them in order to satisfy labor market impact requirements. Employers must now invite those not even demonstrating an interest or have not even been searching opportunities to participate in the job. I've got philosophical problems with this in terms of what this means for an individual's responsibility versus an employer's responsibility, particularly in respect to employers and individuals who at the time are strangers to each other. Many would not think it's too much to ask that applicants apply for a job in order to be considered for a job, but the regulations disagree. I've got concerns with that. In addition, the ranking systems have their limitations. Anyone who's used automatic ranking software knows it can be useful, but adult supervision is definitely required. Recruiters with experience will agree that often automated ranking systems get it wrong, and there needs to be human review and oversight of the applications received. Automated ranking often nominates those absolutely unqualified for the job or rules out dream candidates, especially for resumes associated with technical industrial work. Algorithms and keyword matching through resume parsing are useful. I'm not anti-tech, but they're no match for recruiter screens. My worry is to expect future conversations with HRDC agents reviewing your labor market impact application who insist that a computer-generated ranking supersedes the ranking instead given by a recruitment expert. And this will be particularly cumbersome in industries with technical or nuanced in nature, like industrial construction and maintenance or in oil and gas sectors. The system overall has a general lack of respect for skilled trades and industrial technical expertise, and that always has existed and still exists. Many computer and information-based National Occupational Code classifications are exempt from the above for reasons of unique or specialized talent. Of note, it's not apparent that a unique or specialized talent is recognized for industrial or technical skilled positions, and we view this as an ongoing and problematic bias. This report was inspired by a wonderful article by Brian Dingle of Gordon Ladner Gervais LLP, and I'll post the link in the comments section to the original article. And we hope that this points to some landmines that your team can work to avoid, especially if you're on an initial project setup for projects that are going to ramp up in about a year and a half to 2 years. Because now's the time to start thinking about it. And if you want some, we have some scars, obviously, from doing this the right and the wrong way. And if you do need some assistance or would like some assistance on reviewing your corporate project recruitment processes in an attempt to de-risk the above noted challenges, we'd be grateful for the opportunity to lend assistance. And we can be reached at www.workforcedelivery.com. Thank you.